Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. So, just yesterday, we got the latest report that the Mesopotamia is part of the Western civilization. And the white category, or the people who are like Europeans, has been extended to Persia. Last month, it was that the Persians or like the Indians are brown whites, like the brown Caucasians. I mean, it's keep changing. Every week is a fun. So the word mythology was coined against the ancient histories of Ramayana and Mahabharata. It comes with the Sanskrit word myth, and logos means a study or science or to throw light on something. And opposite of that is Sattology. So don't use the word mythology for ancient histories connected to Vedic culture, including Puran, because some of the evidences you may not be there, but they are. I mean, they are the Puranas are in a different context, can be interplanetary as well. I have a very special guest today, and we are going to talk about the global economic scene. So let us welcome Sri Sumeet Mehta from Mumbai, India.
Namaste Aditya ji. Thank you
Namaste.
very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure being
Welcome.
on your
You're
show.
very On opening lines, like you attended a Niti Aayog meeting recently, and you attended some seminars. And what is the general view about American economy and how the dollar is faring all over the world?
Uh, Firstly, this meeting that I had attended was chaired by the former Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, Mr. Dr. Rajiv Kumar. And this was organized by another economic think tank called as Pehle India Foundation. And they are working on their own initiative to reach out to people across more than 30 odd cities, meeting people across a larger section of the society, be it bankers, merchant bankers, investment bankers, fund managers and investment managers, entrepreneurs, CXOs of various companies, promoters and founders of listed companies and startups, you know, across the board from SME to a very large enterprise, from consultants to money managers. And what they are looking at is to collect a lot of feedback from the people on the ground about what is happening in the economy and what are the impediments or challenges that the country faces in order to achieve Prime Minister Modi's vision of around a $40 trillion economy when we celebrate 100th year of independence, that is in 2047. So this was a meeting where we were discussing various things, but yeah, one very important thing is that US has been a harbinger for economic growth across multiple jurisdictions, multiple economies. The Chinese growth from 80s up to 2008 was driven by the single engine that was US economy. US economy kept on growing, the consumption kept on growing, the imports kept on growing, and in turn, China kept on growing, backed by exports. Now we are seeing a challenge because US market is stagnated, European market is stagnated, and this war has created a bigger economic challenge for Europe, and to a large extent for US. Of course, US is not as worst as Europe, but there are challenges. So, you know, export driven economy will work up to an extent, but beyond that, export is not the prime focus for economic growth for any country in the world. That is the first learning that India has kind of accepted, that we cannot depend 100% on export driven growth, which China did from 80s to 2008. Second most important thing is India also knows that we have a huge market. We are roughly a 1.35 billion market, which is second largest in the world after China. So we have a huge domestic consumption. And very importantly, Indians the economists, the fund managers, the bankers, investment bankers, they've realized one thing, that Prime Minister Modi has worked on a very interesting model of capital generation and capital formation in the country by focusing on investments in infrastructure. India has invested around 16 trillion rupees in infrastructure in the country. And this has been in the last 8 years, the modernization of railways, construction of highways, construction of border roads, upgradation of railway lines, you name it, and we have seen ports, so many ports coming up across the country. So we have invested so much heavily into infrastructure development, that has also driven the growth of the country. Here I would like to give you one economic data. India's incremental capital output ratio is 4, which means that for every rupee invested in capital investments, we are seeing a 0.25 rupees or 25 paise increase in GDP. So we are now focusing, India has realized that we have to focus not just on international market, we also need to focus on investments in capital assets in the country, public assets or private sector or public sector, that doesn't matter. But in the meeting also, the discussion was about how can we increase the gross fixed capital formation to around 40% of GDP instead of around 30-32%, which is the current levels. Because at 40% of capital formation, we'll see a economic growth of around 10%. So India has three engines of growth: exports, which is definitely a big thing, but we are not solely dependent on America. We are also trading with other countries. To give you one very interesting data point, Russia has given us a list of 500 items which it was importing from Europe and America, which they want India to supply. So that is a huge market. Pharmaceuticals, they are looking at importing all the pharmaceutical products, be it bulk drugs or for formulations from India, which is a huge market. It is around 8 to 9 billion, around $10 billion market. So I think we are dealing in the right way, expanding our scope of influence across all the blocks without getting stuck up with one block of countries. We are looking at Africa very interestingly and very positively. Africa has been the target of economic growth for all the major economies, be it China, be it India, be it US, be it Europe. Because Africa has huge natural resources. They have population, around 2 odd billion people. That's a huge population. So Africa is everything that can help other countries to grow. The domestic market, the access to natural resources, and it is unexplored territory. So there is huge opportunity in terms of creating fixed assets, infrastructure, and everything in Africa. So America is focusing, we are also focusing over there, and we are now looking at even Latin America, be it Venezuela, be it Brazil, be it Argentina. We are dealing with all the countries. So my view is that India understands that the growth is tapering, because the growth that America achieved was largely because of huge numbers coming in from Wall Street and the bubble economy which it had created by uh, boosting consumption by allowing people to borrow. That is not a sustainable method of growing, and that will someday taper off and someday it will fizzle out. So India has a balanced method, approach of capital formation, domestic consumption, which is not driven by creating a bubble funded by bank loans and credit cards. And third is, of course, exports. And, you know, in the meeting, we did discuss about how exports can be promoted, what all initiatives can be done by various government bodies as well as states, as well as by various trade bodies in the country to help MSMEs. See, the growth in India is now coming from MSMEs, and MSMEs need to grow. And the focus is over there. So a lot of initiatives are happening in the private sector, in the uh, sectors. All the trade bodies are also working independently apart from the government to help MSMEs grow. I am advising one of the trade bodies in the country in helping set up a accelerator, business accelerator, which will help mid-sized entrepreneurs who are in manufacturing sector to explore global markets. And the trade body will have They will provide international contacts, leads on which the local industries can explore the market. They can contact the buyers and reach out to them and grow their exports. So there is a multi-pronged approach happening, and I think people know that America cannot be fully dependent on, because American economy itself is in a difficult situation, and Indians are looking at markets across the world. They are not just limited to America the way China was dependent totally on America from 80s to 2008. This is my view on the economy largely.
You said some very interesting points, and just 2 days ago, American Congress released $1.7 trillion in the American economy. And just imagine, in last 40 years, China has earned $4 trillion in 40 years, 50 years maybe. And Americans, we printed almost $10 trillion in just 3 years, last 3 years. So do you feel that the China feels cheated, or
Pardon? China
will feel cheated on this, because they took 40 years to accumulate $3 trillion, and we printed more than 10 in 3 years.
US has the biggest commodity that American economy has exported. The United States of America has exported is nothing but the US dollar currency notes. $14 trillion worth of currency notes have been exported. All that America did was import, either give them treasuries or give them printed currency notes. And China is sitting with around 2 trillion plus dollars, or rather $3 trillion worth of US dollar, be it in treasury bills or in currency. So, that is why we were hearing after the Lehman crisis and everything that China was demanding exchanging the US dollar against gold. And now China, Russia, India, everybody is moving towards gold reserves instead of predominantly depending upon US dollar as a global reserve currency. So US does face a problem, because you can defend the currency only when you have a very strong economy, when you are a huge producer of goods and services and a huge exporter of goods and services, which can offset your imports, which is what China did. China's exports are more than the imports. So it doesn't matter for them. Okay. They are importing raw material, they're exporting finished goods, and there's a huge value addition happening in that. So for them, it doesn't matter. But you look at America, America is importing everything from China, Thailand, and other places, Philippines, and everything. Even the t-shirts and the caps and the shoes, everything is made in China. What is America manufacturing locally? Nothing. Since the first epic visit of Kissinger to China, and thereafter, the way American industry started looking at China as a base for cheap labor so that they can get cheap material. That has in turn impacted America heavily. Today, where is the domestic manufacturing? What is the source for employment generation in America? Very difficult. That is why we see all the noises. Even Barack Obama said that we will want the software to be developed in Buffalo instead of Bangalore. Why? Because even the youth in America are getting restless. They want jobs over there. You can't be easily offshoring manufacturing to China, which has become the global manufacturing hub or the global factory, or all the services back to countries like India and others in Southeast Asia, who can provide cheaper services on the ITS front, that is the call centers, data centers, and everything. Today, America is facing a challenge because of it. So my view is dollar will remain. Economy of America still remains very strong because of a huge size that they have, the huge infrastructure investments which they have made, the kind of technologies and the patents which they have, the kind of companies like big tech and big pharma which are supporting the economy very big in a very big way, and of course Wall Street. So financial services and all this put together, American economy remains strong. But how long can it continue? I have my doubts over there, especially in a situation where now American army or the government is not able to defend the dollar. We have seen in the past that America went on a war to defend the US dollar. They ensured that US dollar remains the global fiat currency for all the transactions. And that is how they ensured that dollar is a global reserve currency. But how long can they do it after the kind of withdrawal that they have done from Afghanistan? So there are challenges. The Russia-Ukraine war has again created challenges for America, because that is undermining the American supremacy, or the the ability of US to defend its own partners. The war has stretched too long, but there is no conclusion. It is not helping America as well. Europe has actually gone into recession. Today, UK has announced that it will be in recession even in 2024. What does that suggest? That shows that countries will have to. France is talking about creating an independent bloc and not being dependent on US. That is undermining the NATO. That is undermining the US military power. How long can the country defend its dollar with a weak army, or the army that nobody fears? So I feel we'll see a multipolar world. Or till the dissolution of Soviet Union, we had a communist bloc, the Comecon bloc, and the NATO, or the Western capitalist bloc. The dissolution of Soviet Union or the fall of communism created a unipolar world. Now we are seeing a multipolar world coming, because one side we have a Pax Americana dream, one side we have a Pax China dream. Both the countries are wrestling to, in you know, exert their influence on the global, market or the global economy. And again, the most intriguing thing is that both the countries are heavily dependent upon each other. China's economic growth is coming out of exports to US. US's market is supplied with Chinese imports. So both are heavily interdependent on each other. At the same time, both are trying to wrestle their control over the world and fight against each other. So we are in very interesting times. We are at the cusp where we'll see a new world order come about, and how it will shape up, only time will tell.
Now, the in India, the biggest threat to India comes from China in terms of military threat. That's the only neighbor which has big enough military to challenge Indian military. And also the Chinese philosophy of encroaching lands, like they've encroached Tibet since 1959. Tibet is an independent country or part of India, either of those two categories. But Indian politicians have always made a blunder. Always, historically. Military wins on the ground have not translated into diplomatic or national victory. So they have done it again and again. And you just mentioned that the US dollar is important because of US military. And I have also mentioned in my books also that US dollar is prominent not because of any financial reason other than the military. We saw Libya, we saw Iraq, Saddam Hussein. We saw so many leaders toppled just because of US dollars. And we just saw Peru's government toppled by the Americans for American dollar, because the Chinese influence and Indian influence in Peru was increasing. You'll be shocked to know that every second motorcycle sold in Peru is an Indian motorcycle, Indian brand. And every second or third utility vehicle is sold as an Indian vehicle, either Mahindra or Tata. And so Peru is the hub of South America. And Indians, so now the government is toppled, so now more American exports are going to flow to Peru. So how do you think India can defend without having an aggressive military posture?
See, China is an aggressive force. There is no doubts in that. Rather, Kissinger has been very clear about it. And he has said that China works on the policy of doctrine of dominance, whereas India has a value which the European Enlightenment age created, which is the doctrine of balance of power. And of course, to some extent, the former leadership in India, be it since Nehru's time, had been very docile, or they were very pacifist. Whereas we are seeing a change in the leadership in India, and the way India thinks, with a very strong leadership at the top now under the Prime Minister Modi's government leading from the front. So we have seen a huge difference within India, but China does remain a challenge. I don't see China as an adversary. China is having its due share in the growth on the global platform. Global economy is growing also due to China. It has grown due to China. And we are looking at our own growth, and to a great extent, it will also come from eating away the share of China. Today, we are seeing there are announcements that Foxconn suppliers who are manufacturing the OEMs who are manufacturing various critical parts for iPhone are looking at investing in shifting from China to UP, that is the state called northernmost state of Uttar Pradesh, with a population of around 200 million. So roughly the size of Brazil, I can say. And there's so much of investments coming in, people, companies shifting from China to UP, and UP would be the next powerhouse for manufacturing growth in the country. So China is definitely going to be feeling challenged and pressurized with loss of industry, loss of export driving industries, the loss of job creating industries. So we will see a friction, but very importantly, what I would like to assert upon is this is something Prime Minister Modi also said on three platforms. It was the G7, G20, as well as on the last year's UNGA platform. All the three places he made one very clear statement that first thing is India has to be an integral part of the global value chain. He's now not talking about supply chain, he's talking about value chain, what we can add value to. And this is very much in lines with the report made by WTO, which is on enhancing the global value chains. So India is looking at becoming a competitive market, unlike what it was a few decades ago, when we were looking at only manufacturing for self, but it was an incompetitive market, be it in terms of quality or in terms of cost. Now India is addressing those issues, so we will definitely be a challenge to China. China is going to feel threatened. Also, China has its own internal political issues and the geopolitical issues that it has with all the neighbors. Be it Russia on the north, they are claiming Vladivostok as their own territory and claiming making statements that they will take it back from Russia. They have problems with each and every roughly 18, 19 countries bordering them. The only way to silence all the countries and kind of put in some fear in their minds is by having some kind of tussle with India. They can't do it with Taiwan because US will stand to defend Taiwan. So the only country which is a target is India, because India is somewhere offended US also and NATO also by supporting Russia by not joining the bloc and buying heavily from Russia. Be it mainly largely it is buying crude oil from Russia at a discounted price. We have also done huge transactions in buying fertilizers at a cheaper cost from Russia and exporting heavily to Russia. Now we are also having a rupee ruble transactions, and six banks in India are designated for rupee trade between Russia and India. So it is natural for America and Europe to feel offended, and they may not come to our support if in case China uses some aggression against India. So in such a situation, we will have to face something. But and China will need this not only to silence other smaller countries in South China Sea who are not agreeing with China on the borders, on the maritime borders of South China Sea, but it is also about silencing their own people, because when there is a lot of internal problem, divert the attention to India, create an external problem so that the local problems can be solved or at least suppressed for a while and people can be distracted. So China will have to do something, but Indian government is kind of ready. Today I hear that there was a urgent meeting called by the Prime Minister to discuss the status of China and India's preparations on that front. So I think government definitely knows much more than us and it is prepared.
So one question comes in, coming back to the economy, and the BRICS is coming up with its own currency this year, and the BRICS has made a very beautiful arrangement of retaining national currencies as well as trading in a BRICS currency. It's a very unique mixture, like combination of both. Uh, so, what do you see the future of euro, and what do you see the future? Because I'm not worried about US dollar. Euro may collapse. Great Britain pound may start using Great Britain dollars. It may happen. It will happen, or it may happen. But BRICS currency is a new addition to the world, which more African countries are coming to it. And India, you just mentioned in before the talks, before preparation, you mentioned 32 countries have decided to trade in Indian rupees as per the RBI order. So, what do you see the future of euro and Great Britain pound? I mean, I call it small Britain pound, but you people will call it Great Britain.
I'll come to euro first. Euro has been not a very successful experiment of a global currency. Euro benefited only one country to the greatest extent, and that is Germany. The second country benefited was France. But if you look at small countries, be it like Greece or even Italy, they are not benefited out of euro. How long they can continue together is a big challenge. The reasons are also very simple to understand from a macroeconomic perspective. You have single currency and you have multiple central banks. That cannot work. You have multiple economies with multiple tax structures, multiple growth drivers. Every economy has multiple fiscal deficits. Every country has a different fiscal deficit. Every country has a different inflation number. Every country has a different demand supply economics, different strength when it comes to international markets, be it for exports or be it for fundraising. In such a situation, having one currency to manage multiple economies does not work. It is a failed idea. It is going on because it is like a marriage which is to be sustained. So people are continuing, but I think over a period of time, when the large countries like Germany and France face a bigger problem out of Europe, and they may probably be the first countries to walk out of Europe. When Greece faced a bankruptcy crisis, there was a huge debate globally about whether euro has really helped the smaller countries like Greece and all. So, in this kind of situation, believe euro may not see the light of the day when the whole global regime changes. Probably it will sustain for a decently long time, if not perpetually. Definitely, it cannot survive perpetually. It will survive for a decently long time of maybe a decade, 2 decades. But then it will slowly start tapering and we'll see euro crashing. Germany, France will prefer to go back to Deutschmark and francs. Switzerland was the only smartest country who ensured that they did not join the euro economic zone and they kept the Swiss franc as a separate currency. And they remained strong even in the worst crisis periods. So my view is that euro cannot survive for long. People will have to come because you cannot have one currency managing, which is working in multiple countries as a local currency. It cannot work. You will have to have different currencies. As about pound, UK is on a verge of a collapse. They are seeing one of the worst times. Brexit has been one of the biggest disasters for UK. It had a huge impact. Brexit was actually, when they were part of the European Union, they also earned a lot of benefit out of trade with Europe and by ensuring that many global companies have London as the global headquarters, and from London they would trade with Europe. Now that is first big challenge which is which is hurt London in a big way and UK in a very big way. Second thing is financial services. That is one of the largest sectors in UK, and that is also facing challenges today because alternate when Brexit started, European Union also started working on Frankfurt and Luxembourg as the alternate financial capitals, so that they don't have to depend upon London. So all these things are going to have an impact, but still UK has some industries which are doing huge value addition. Unfortunately, they don't have a local economy, but they are looking at ties with multiple countries, FTAs with multiple countries, like with India, to offset the losses that they are incurring because of Brexit. What I understand is India is on verge of signing a trade deal with UK, which is around $500 billion over the next 5 to 10 years, which is huge for UK. Of course, there are loopholes in that which will be exploited by China as well, because the FTA talks about British companies, be it service providers or service companies or tech companies or even manufacturing or trading companies, getting benefits. Now, China can prefer a small sweatshop in UK, a front or a shell, which can be used to export goods to India wherever Chinese goods are banned. So we will see these kind of challenges in our transactions with UK. But in long term, I'm not sure what is the future of UK and the, you know, the pound sterling. They'll have to work very hard. They survive for long. The bigger problem is UK freezing the wealth of Russian oligarchs. Now London was the hub or the capital of global money coming from slush sources and oligarchs, be it Chinese oligarchs or Russian oligarchs or even Indian oligarchs for that matter. Lot of Indian money, slush money is parked in London right now. British or rather London real estate is driven by Indians and Chinese to a largest extent. You look at the numbers, we are the people who are fueling the real estate market of the London. So if that starts tapering, pound sterling is in a very difficult situation, worse than US dollar. US dollar is on a very strong wicket even now. But I don't know what is the future of pound sterling in this kind of situation where global capital start seeing UK as a danger point. Instead, they will prefer another countries. Yeah.
One of my best family friends, at least five family friends have houses in Mayfair in London, and very close family friends, some of the richest, biggest names in Indian industry. And when I go there, it looks like a Mayfair looks like an Indian street now. And Mayfair is the costliest area of UK. Even the Queen cannot buy a house now today over there. Queen will be questioned by her taxpayers. She may buy, she can because she's the sovereign of UK. The last question. So the Indian wealth in the past was driven by the Indian entrepreneurship supported by the Indian kings. Very Marthanda Varma, Kerala and Andhra and Tamil Nadu, were richer than the entire Europe put together in 1741. Just two states of India. And Europe was in desperate poverty. In 17th century, they were like, even though colonization, they began in 15th century, but they were desperate in 17th, 18th century also. And by 19th century, they were almost out of power in most of the countries. So the real phase of European colonization, where they looted, was around 200 years total, 200 years old. And due to the karma they accumulated, they're poor again today. So the karma plays a big cycle in the big factor in the nation's journey also, not just individual's journey. Now, you have seen, and you and I are lucky to see many things, including 91 collapse of Soviet Union, which many people cannot remember. Some of them are even born after that. And we have seen a lot. Our generation has seen a lot. And probably previous generations also saw a lot. They saw World War I, World War II, and many things like that. Now, the future, we are looking at the social media world and the economy driven by pure information. And information is all controlled from, we say data is golden, all controlled by the West. Whether you take any social media platform is a Western platform. So how do you think the economies of the rest of the world are going to compete when they are dependent on the information exchange on the Western technology? That was the last question.
Well, I'm not very sure about how the other economies will, wade their way through the information controlled world where many critical pieces of information would be withheld, propaganda would be provided. But one thing I foresee is that countries and the elites of various countries have started realizing, and even the elites in US have started realizing that people have got access to much more than what they are being fed. There's a lot of information exchange which is happening between India and other countries and India, between China and other countries. Russia is providing information. We have seen President Putin making very interesting statements. There's a lot of things happening on that front. So information, I think first thing is arbitrage on information. The what we in finance call as the opportunity cost of perfect information is now becoming a reality. The opportunity cost is also going down, and we are seeing people getting access to each other's market much more easily because of technology, because of information. At the same time, democracies are under extreme concern because information which is manipulated, uh, local rebellions, local revolutions can be fueled using social media. We have seen various color revolutions in Middle East and West Asia. We have seen the way regime changes are being triggered using various NGOs, NPOs, by using various non-state actors, by using media and activists. So, we are in a very difficult time as well as very promising time at the same time, at the same moment. So, we are seeing countries which can grow exponentially. They have a huge capability, but there is also a presence of various non-state actors which are controlled from foreign sources. And we had done a discussion on FCRA and the law controlling the non-profit organizations in India, and how they are funded from foreign sources to create disturbances in India and destabilize India. That will not only happen in India, it will happen in multiple countries, in Africa, in other Southeast Asian countries, probably some European countries who are not amenable with American idea. So, how was Zelensky installed as the president? It was totally a artwork of information warfare, using media, using social media, using creating aura around people, and it worked. So we'll face this. What was the farmers' protest on the borders of Delhi with Punjab? What was it? It was only and only about a information warfare to stop India from pushing in for farm reforms, which was eating away a huge part of the annual budget of the country, and to create a free market. It was done very successfully, and Indian government had to withdraw. So there is a huge information, manipulation using media, social media, activists, and that can be used to hurt the economy. That can happen in other countries if there are some reforms happening. If there are some countries who are going in to support, probably deal with countries which are not in American interest, then probably those government can be thrown away, overthrown using social media and activists, and probably even media. So we are living in interesting times. There's a promise, there's a danger. Prime Minister Modi is lucky that despite all the efforts to destabilize the government, to do everything, he has survived till now. Whether he will survive up to 2024 and later, I only pray that he does. But you know, we'll have to see how the things shape up in 2023 and 2024 in run up to the elections. But we'll see problems coming in using information. Information will be used as a weapon.
So do you think that the CIA or any other Western agencies will topple Modi government due to misinformation campaigns using American
Yes,
media platforms?
yes, I do feel so.
Thank you so much, Sumit ji, for coming on the show, and for all the viewers who are watching it. Do like, share, subscribe, and let us know your feedback. Also, there is a Authors Lit Fest coming, organized by Sattology on August 25, 2023. So all authors and wannabe authors, publishers are invited to register. The links are there on Twitter handle of ours. So you go to Twitter, you will see the first posting, which is pinned on the top. Please do register and let us know your feedback. And also let us know so that we can release, if some people have to come from abroad, we will have to work with the State Department to release the letters of invitation. So let us know, and we will happily do that. Namaste and thank you.
Thank you.